HS2 and the cancelling of HS2, as we have reported on in the past, has not gone down well. Even so, in the Conservative Party. And especially when you've got someone like Andrew Adonis, who works so hard to get cross-party support to get HS2 up and off the ground. Someone who, once again, as we says, understands that, if you build this type of infrastructure, the UK benefits from it. Once it is built, you benefit from it. And here's the thing: you want to look at high-speed rail going over cost, but still providing massive benefit. Look at Japan. The bullet train in Japan, the high-speed rail there that was built, took longer than expected, overcosted, but provides billions of pounds in economic benefits to Japan. And you want a more recent example? Look at Spain. Once again, Spain took longer than expected to build, came in over budget, but guess what? Spain is reaping the rewards of high-speed rail. Once you built it, it's there forever. No, there's not going to be someone who just comes and takes it away. But yeah, this is honestly, as I've said, the biggest ever, like, almost act of self-sabotage. Not only has Sunak, but the Tories have really done to HS2, because prior to that conference, there was universal cross-party support for HS2. After, or at least during that conference and going into the conference, all of a sudden, all these Tories start coming forward and say, oh, HS2 is too expensive now. Oh, we can't build HS2 now. Of course you can. Of course you can. Because it provides huge economic benefits once you've built it. And we're going to go over Andrew Adonis's response here to Rishi Sunak and to critics of HS2. I think he gets this, once again, spot on. And I've said before, there are people out there across all parties who really get like the need for building infrastructure, and the fact that the Tories just haven't really built infrastructure over the past 13 years. Yeah, it shows. It shows massively in many, many areas that they haven't been doing that. But we're going to get into Andrew Adonis's response, because I think it is well worth going over. It hasn't really received any media coverage either, so I sort of do feel that it should at least be covered in some way or form. So, as always, before we do go diving into this, please do remember to click on the like, share, and subscribe button. And of course, down below there are links to my Patreon page and a one-off donation link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can buy me coffee. And of course, there is the YouTube thank you button, and of course, the Pony Club down below as well, where if you want to see a interesting Mad Nads story, head on over there to the Patreon or the Pony Club down below. Like I say, links down below, and you can check out not only that video, but the rest of the videos that I do for you guys. So, let's have a look what Andrew Adonis had to say to Rishi Sunak and to critics of HS2. So, you would think from Sunak and the media that HS2 was dead and deserved its fate. But as HS2's main architect back in 2009 and 10, I only wish Labour had stayed in office long enough to see it through, instead of the serial incompetence which followed in the next 13 years of Tory rule. In fact, despite Rishi Sunak's cancellation of HS2's northern branches, 140 miles of new track from London to Birmingham and Britain's first and second largest cities will soon be completed. This part largely follows the 2010 blueprint, a tribute to the exceptional and able planners who pioneered HS2. This is also thanks to a cross-party consensus I worked hard to foster, which survived until Sunak's bizarrely chose to make the cancellation of a railway line from Birmingham. And that's what I want to get across. That up until this, there was not a large consensus in the Conservative Party calling to cancel HS2. It only came about because of Sunak's plans, that he was going to be the change bringer, that he was going to be, make the hard decisions. Cancelling HS2 is one of the worst decisions you could have ever made, because, as we've said numerous times when we've covered HS2, the benefits of it uh, are going to be there. HS2 pays for itself. you know? So, anyway, he continues. So, Manchester, a totem of this change, to be a totem of his claim to be the agent of change at the unpopular tail end of over 4 terms of Tory Brexit and austerity government. This cross-party consensus enabled the project to advance after 2010, albeit far too slowly, despite almost annual changes in the executive or ministerial leaders responsible for HS2 since 2010. There are more tunnels, and the total cost is a lot higher than originally envisaged, which I will refer to later. But this critical section of HS2 is intact and will not be undone when HS2 opens. I expect it will be greeted as a transport miracle, rather than like the first railways and motorways and high-speed lines around the rest of the world. All of these at a time when hard critics on the grounds of cost and the novelty in their fraught periods of construction, high frequency, reliable, high speed trains will complete the central London to Birmingham journey in just 40 minutes, half the current journey time, and without the constant disruption which bedevils today's congested Victorian main line from Euston to the north for the north. And that's a fair point. This fast journey time, when this starts running, you're going to see a lot of people saying how good this line is. You are going to see a lot of people say how good this line is. I guarantee you, there's going to be a lot of vast, I think, perception change when this line opens properly and when people start to see it and the benefits of it. Then everyone will go, why did we not complete the rest of this? Anyway, he continues. For the critics, you would think that HS2 was a luxury. Why is it then virtually every other large developed nation in Europe and Asia, starting with Japan over 60 years ago, between Tokyo, Nagoya, and Osaka, and a distance similar to that between London, Manchester, and Glasgow, built high-speed lines connecting their principal cities? So again, we always say, if you want to look at the perfect example of why we should build high-speed rail, just look at Japan. Anyway, he continues. And all of them are running at high capacity for exactly the same reason as HS2 is being built, because the necessary for vastly more rail capacity and the connectivity than the existing 19th century railways provide in this new age of the train, when intercity traffic is shifting definitively from road to rail. The valid criticism of HS2 is that it is being built several decades later than it should have been because of the poverty of aspiration of leaders of the British state. This haunts our infrastructure and products and the broader politics. Despite the amputation of the Manchester and Leeds branches of HS2, high-speed trains will run off the high-speed line north of Birmingham and proceed slowly to Manchester and Liverpool and Glasgow on these existing tracks. When that happens, the contrast between the old and new rail infrastructure will be stark, and congestion north of Birmingham will be so severe. And I expect that the Manchester and Leeds branches will not only be built fairly rapidly, but will complete the 2010 blueprint. So this is something a lot of people have been saying, that you build these new high-speed lines, which the high-speed rails are going to run on, and then if you are going north of Birmingham, which these trains inevitably will go on to, they'll come off the high-speed line onto the normal line, there's going to be a lot of congestion around north of Birmingham. And it is going to be like night and day. And as he rightly points out, this will cause people to go, yes, we should build not only the northern leg up to Manchester, but the offshoot off to Leeds as well. We should absolutely build these lines. And I completely agree. I think that is what is going to happen. I will predict this now. I think there will be a sea change in what goes on with HS2 once the London to Birmingham line gets fully open and people sort of experience it and say, oh, actually, why don't we have the rest of this high speed rail line? Yeah, well, it's because Sunak cancelled it for no apparent good reason. But no, I agree. I think as soon as people start to see the advantages of it, the rest of it gonna get built. It's obvious it's gonna get built. So it continues. There will be massive pressure for the North to be leveled up to the 21st century rail standards of London and the Midlands. The problems of HS2 result from the mismanagement in execution, not from the concept or design. The main effort of the Sunak Acts will be to dramatically increase costs and regional disparities until the 2010 scheme is eventually completed. Every year of the delay in existing of HS2 will have a seriously detrimental effect on the economics of the northern contributors as people and businesses move to Birmingham in particular. With its super fast, frequent, and reliable commuter style service to London, it will include a direct connection with the Elizabeth line, a 30-minute journey from from a huge park and ride station at the Birmingham International Station, serving Birmingham Airport, which it also connects to, the West Coast Main Line, and motorways to Solihull. So, despite the recent alarms and excursions, the HS2 is progressing well and will be probably completed according to its original conception, meaning the key requirements for rail capacity and connectivity and bringing the North and South divide, which we animated it from the start. And that's the big thing. You are going to see, once again, when this starts and people start to see, going on a further journey, it's going to pull people and more businesses to Birmingham. It's going to pull more business from the north to the Midlands. Ultimately, that's not going to be good for the north. Once again, if you want to level up the north, you've got to give it stuff like this. If you don't give it stuff like this, well, like I say, look what happens. So I predict that Sunak's, I have no regrets in having initiated HS2, and I predict that Sunak's decision to halt construction north of Birmingham will be seen as one of the worst, most short-sighted transport infrastructure decisions of the last 50 years. I absolutely agree on that. I think it will. Later on, he's going to call this the Brexit of like transport infrastructure, and I agree. The cancelling of HS2 is a disaster. The more they push for this, the worse it becomes. So the main contextual criticism of HS2 to have gained traction is that it was engineered to, quote, be too fast. I love this. Oh, HS2 is just too fast. With some particularly Greens against HS2, and particularly Green Party members themselves, saying that HS2 would go so fast the train would fly off the tracks. I kid you not, that is a criticism that the Greens have been spreading about HS2. But anyway, we'll go back to it. So the main criticism that's gained traction was it was engineered to be too fast at 250 miles per hour, making it Europe's fastest railway. The continent's existing high-speed lines are mostly engineered to 200 miles an hour or less. This allegedly adds a great to the cost. It was my personal insistence as a rail enthusiast, in fact, that the cost difference between building a conventional line and a high-speed one estimate that only 10%. This is a marginally higher price and necessarily for a fairly straight line on the HS2 alignment, and would only also apply into a slightly less high-speed line at 200 miles per hour. The reason for HS2 running up to 250 miles per hour is simply because it is more modern than most of other Europe's and Japan's high-speed rail lines, which were built decades ago. Most high-speed lines are now being built to 200 or higher speeds. So I love this. We are thinking ahead. We are using the latest technology to build high-speed rail, to be 250 miles an hour. That's because, once again, technology advances. We can now build that. All the other lines that run at 200 miles an hour, they were built with the old, technology. The fact that we can get that extra 50 miles an hour, That just goes to show how much the technology has come along. So, meanwhile, Japan, once again, pioneering high speed rail, is now building an ultra fast mag level line running at 311 miles per hour between Tokyo and Osaka. And to revive the 60-year-old high speed line and provide additional capacity. It would be perverse for the UK to opt for old technology as a matter of principle. Maybe we should have gone straight to maglev. I considered this seriously back in 2009 and 10 as a joint project with the Japanese. However, I judge the costs and likely the critics and the sheer challenge of a modern Britain pioneering this in 2022. Sorry, Britain pioneering this in an uncharacteristic way as the inscrutable barriers. Now to the cost, which is for the full HS2 scheme has roughly doubled since it was fixed at 56 billion in 2015. Shortly before the legislation to build the railway was enacted by Parliament in a 10-1 majority. Cancelling the Northern Leg by Sunak did not require a parliamentary vote. It had been done so that if it had been done, he would have probably have lost it. That's something else that a lot of people are pointing out. The fact that we have had a parliamentary vote on this, and Sunak has cancelled HS2 without having a parliamentary vote. And Andrew Adonis is pointing out something quite right, that if he were to have a vote on cancelling HS2, he would most likely lose it. Because we talked about, if you remember, at the Conservative Party conference, there being two rival manifestos. Well, one of those rival manifestos was from the Northern Red Wall Conservative MPs. And a big part of their manifesto in that was championing HS2 and talking about how HS2 was going to be this amazing, good transport infrastructure, was going to level up the North. Are they suddenly going to vote against it? I don't think so. So anyway, he continues. Most of this cost has been caused by inflation since 2015. And it is vital to appreciate that construction cost inflation has been affected virtually all infrastructure projects, large and small, to similar degrees since 2015. The Hinkley C nuclear power station, now under construction, has seen its cost nearly double from 18 billion to 33 billion in that same period. Furthermore, the same cost of inflation pressures will apply to all those new and upgraded Northern Rail projects, which will now become necessary after HS2's cancellation, including a large stretch of the newly announced rail line from Liverpool to Manchester and Leeds, which will alone eat up most of the HS2 savings of 36 billion. It will also apply to all the road and rail schemes supposedly made possible by HS2's cancellation, but which had mostly been promised long before. So he's calling that out right again. This whole saving scheme, this 36 billion, which cancelling HS2 has supposedly saved, you've got all these other infrastructure projects. As Andrew Adonis has rightly pointed out, inflation has increased the cost of all infrastructure projects, both big and small, to increase in price. This saving to build all these other all these other sort of replacement things for HS2, the as I have dubbed them, the northern suggestions, it's not going to be enough to cover all of them. You're going to end up spending more money to complete all these projects than you would of building HS2. Which then begs the question, if we're spending more money to build all these other transport projects, why could we not have built HS2 and all those other transport projects as well, which would have also brought huge economic benefits to the UK? So, the original 56 billion was itself far too high by international standards, as is the cost of Hinkley C and virtually all other large infrastructure in modern Britain, including new roads. Short of the Stonehenge Road tunnel for the A303 in Wiltshire alone was projected to cost over 2 billion. But the answer is to tackle the UK's problems in exciting infrastructure projects, including excessive planning requirements and political delays, NIMBYism, and the lack of embedded engineering expertise in the British state. something else that should be, I think, tackled. We talked about this last time, that we go out and we go and get, outside contractors. And the problem is the government then doesn't have engineers or people it can go and consult internally on this. So there's no internal expertise, which I think is something that the British government continuously screws up on multiple fronts. Multiple fronts. Um, where he continues. Problems. So the answer is not to obviously cancel vital projects halfway through, long after the escalating costs have become clear. Even with these higher costs, Britain still needs to spend far less than most developed nations on infrastructure as a share of its national income. It will surely not be beyond the capacity of modern Britain to have a modern railway line serving its principal cities. To argue this by the most inscrutably to be, quote, low value on the economic cost benefit ratio, the Graveman of Stephen Glaster's critique is to defy the experience of virtually the entire developed world. It is like arguing that motorways should not have been built, and there were many who said so at the time. As the ex-head of the RAC Foundation, Glazier would have never have made that mistake. It is the transport equivalent of Brexit. Last year, the Elizabeth line came in finally at a bloated £19 billion, billions over budget and 4 years late. Just like the M25, the Victoria and Jubilee lines and virtually all transport infrastructure serving highly populated areas. It is massively outperforming its original traffic predictions, and critics have vanished like the dawn mist. It is already the busiest railway line in the UK. HS2, serving the huge cities of London, Birmingham, and Manchester, will very likely go the same way to defy its critics. But what a catastrophe Sunak has inflicted on the country by his short-term decisions and creating a bleaker future. All done for a cynical political gain. It is vital that HS2 is rescued for the national good. Couldn't agree more. Couldn't agree more there with Andrew Adonis. I think he gets that 100% right. He gets it 100% right. And, I wish he had. I wish we had an extra year of an extra 4 years of Labour government, because they would have seen this built, I think, and really committed to it more. But because we have now had that go through, it's depressing. It really is depressing. But yeah, it needs to be built, and we need to, I think, really campaign on this to get the rest of HS2 built and build the rest of it properly. Because it's not that we're going to have to go and build the new line further up further north, and the northern leg off to Leeds as well. We're going to have to go back and re-expand the London to Birmingham line as well, because Rishi Sunak has cut down the other lines that were also being built, because there was going to be built, or at least we don't know, the original station might only be built so it can only handle 6 trains, whereas it was originally going to be built so it could handle 12 trains. We don't know whether that is going to come to fruition or not. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. But I do hope we can revive HS2. It is very, very much needed. It is a vital piece of UK infrastructure. Cancelling it, as Andrew Adonis said, it's the equivalent of of Brexit on transport. We have cut off this massive vital piece of infrastructure to what? And the thing is, it's going to bring a massive benefit. The part that's already been built, it's going to be a massive benefit. So at least that's there. But that being there will obviously fuel the calls for to go, why on earth didn't we build the rest of it? So, yeah, it will go down, I think, in history as one of the greatest transport blunders. And again, the short-term political sightness of Rishi Sunak in cancelling this project, quite rightly so. So, I can only hope that we do get the rest of HS2 built. But certainly, it's not going to be this government that builds it. And I can only hope that Starmer and the rest of Labour do hope to really galvanise and get that built again. And it's going to take someone, I think, in Labour standing up and saying, "Hey, no, we need to build HS2. We need to build the rest of the HS2." Um, but I don't know any really at the moment Labour politicians who are going to go out and start rallying for that. But we need to, as voters, start pushing MPs to rally for that, to get it built, because otherwise, it ain't going to get built. But hey, there you go. So, as always, thank you very much for watching. And of course, as always, we'll see you all next time.